This one's a little off the cuff for me, but it's something that has absolutely bothered me to no end this week. I feel like this is something that should have taken 5-10 minutes to do, and it took like 3 or 4 days to do. And I'm very much big on my time and on making things work smoothly, so I feel like I'm trying to just convey not only my sense of frustration to all of you, but also try and give advice so that you don't have similar frustration. So, one of the things that I did when I was trying to downsize, when I was trying to simplify my life, when I was trying to streamline things, was to go with a Chromebook. I had worked with them in the past, I was an early adopter, and while there's certain things that you can't do, I feel like there is just something mentally so satisfying about knowing that there's certain things that you can't do, that you just shouldn't try to attempt certain things because they're not possible, so you find workarounds, you be creative, you live without and you focus on what you can do and doing that well. I feel like people who try and do everything are awful at everything, and they end up just being like this shell of a person. They're not even a real person to me. They're this amalgamation of just going everywhere and doing everything, and it's like they turn into chickens. So when I think of that, the problem, the other side of the coin, as it were, is that certain things that should be easy and have been perfected elsewhere, you don't have access to. So when I kind of set out this idea that I was going to start revamping my life and creating a social media account for my creative endeavors, part of the issue with that became getting editing software, which I completely appreciate from the fact that these are not intricate videos yet. There's a couple coming up that may be more so. But for the most part, it's just me talking into camera. Now, one of the issues that's come with that over the last couple of weeks as I've been trying to get these out, I've been sick. So I'm not trying to be gross here, but sometimes I'll be talking and, it's a whole nasal issue that's happening right now. So as I'm talking and doing all the things, there are times where I'm talking as I am now, and then I'm like, rah, 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 and I'm trying to get it out, and all of a sudden you're coughing and getting all sorts of mucus and nastiness out, and, you get the wastebasket involved and the tissues, and you're doing all the gross stuff, and then you recompose, you put all that away, and then you start talking again. So, I've needed a little bit more editing than I normally would, but there's also just little things like turning the camera on and off, or, you start talking and you mess up a little bit, so you start over. Whatever the case is, I'm not trying to, get too much into the details here, but there's a little bit of editing that needs to get done. I've also been trying to work with getting an intro in and maybe being an outro, which I haven't quite figured out yet. But my point is that there's very basic editing that I need to do. So I had been using, I think it's something Director or Power Director or something from Cyberlink, and trying to use that with the GR files didn't work. First things first, you have to get a subscription. Because I'm using Chromebook, typically speaking, you either have two options. There are online entities, such as WeVideo, where it's a website and you get a subscription there, or they're an app, and most of the apps are subscription-based as well. Now, the good thing about most of the apps is that they give you a free 7-day trial or something before they hook you into a year-long subscription that you have to pay for up front. But that was a good thing for me because Power Director, which I've used before, for some reason does not work at all with the GR files, the GR video files. And I understand that GR video isn't a main concern for them, but when I was trying to upload and edit these, there's no audio, and there's also a weird color track at the bottom that was messed up. And I'm like, oh, well, there's something wrong here. So that didn't work. And then I started trying to use Adobe, which was even more expensive. And I don't remember what the problem with Adobe was, but there was a big one. And I started going to 2 or 3 of these things, and then, undoubtedly I would get to one, and sometimes they wouldn't have the free trial. So it's like, I'm not going to pay you $80 up front to even know if you're going to work on it. Oh, I remember what the Adobe one was. You could only edit and trim a single file. You couldn't make an amalgamation of different files. So trying to add an intro to a video wasn't working. And I understand that, like, when I say Adobe Premiere does work like that. However, Adobe Premiere doesn't really work well on Chromebooks. So because there's no install base for them. So, like, I ended up working on the it's like Adobe Photo and Video, which is like their Chrome/Android program, which it just didn't work well for what I needed it to, and I don't know, it just wasn't a huge fan. So I kept working on this, kept trying to like find different things, and then you end up with programs where there's no free trial. So I'm not going to pay $100 to try something that may or may not work. And there's no refunds on some of these. So, like, I don't really know what my options are other than just to skip it and move on. So WeVideo is what I ended up going with. And the reason for that was I had initially tried OpenShot, which is a Linux-based video editing software system. And I wanted to like it. I feel like this is what ends up happening with me in tech stuff, because I'm not a tech person, really. I am to things that I care about, but I'm not like a coding type of person. So the idea of Linux appeals to me. I like Linux in the sense that it's more community-based, that you're not dealing with these large corporations, that they're not trying to track all of your data, as well as locking you into these long subscription services where you never own anything. So, like, I remember when Adobe used to be a few $100s, but then you just owned it. And there probably wasn't going to be a reason to upgrade it until you upgraded your computer in 3 to 5 years. So, that's what, $70, $80 a year for Photoshop? Whereas now you're paying like $50 a month for that. And like they bundle a couple of other things in as well to make you feel like you're getting a better deal, but like you can easily be paying hundreds of dollars a month for something that used to only be a few $100s to begin with. Sure, you might be paying up to $500. Maybe that's $100 a year, but that's way better than, $50, $100 a month. Subscription services are the bane of my existence, and I avoid them at all costs. So I kind of narrowed things down to OpenShot and WeVideo, and OpenShot is completely free and there's no subscription. Like, I'm not willing to pay. I just don't like the notion that I'm constantly having to rebuy or pay a subscription for something that I already bought. I feel like you're just wanting my money and you're not really giving me a lot of things for it. So OpenShot is free, and WeVideo is $100 a year, which is kind of on the pricier side. Okay, so I try OpenShot first, which takes me almost all day to figure out how to use it, how to back end it into my thing, which included installing a Linux-based installer first. So I had to run Linux programs and then install OpenShot into the Linux thing. And so like this takes longer than it should because I'm a layman and I don't understand these things. So finally I get OpenShot up and running. So the problem here is that now my memory storage, which I understand memory and storage are not the same thing, but like essentially it set me up with 10 gigs of data that can be accessed by the Linux files and programs. So now I'm having to copy all of my video files into the Linux storage compartment so that they can be read by OpenShot, that then I'm opening into, and then trying to, like, everything was killing my battery. So for one thing, like my laptop has to be plugged in, which is not a problem all the time, but like there are times where you don't want to be tethered because you're, trying to work in different rooms, or you're trying to multitask, or you're trying to do whatever, and it's just bleeding the battery. which goes doubly so for trying to render. So like now, like the newer Apples and the newer render things, the processors have gotten so good that it doesn't really have an issue like it used to. But now you basically, for rendering, for anything else, you basically just have to leave that window open and let it render on its own. And it's just annoying as all get out. Like it's such a hassle. And then there's the issue of trying to deal with your memory and your storage and trying to balance, because you're trying to make sure that you have copies of your original video files, and so now you have multiple copies. So you have like your Chrome storage file, and then you push it over to your Linux video file, and then it gets coded into OpenShot, so then you have your OpenShot file. And then when you export it, you then have your exported file in Linux, which you then need to copy over to your Chrome file so that you can upload it to your final destination spot, which in my term is YouTube and various other things. So the amount of work and this is just not tenable for me as a workflow. It just wasn't. So now I upload to WeVideo to their cloud. So, when this is done, I will take the file and I will upload it to my Chromebook. I will then make a copy file of the original onto my external drive, and then I will upload that file to WeVideo. And once I have seen that WeVideo has it, I will delete it from my computer, because there's not a lot of storage on Chromebooks to begin with, so this is a problem. So then, once that's done, it's there, it exists, I can edit it, and then all of the editing and the processing for it is done on the cloud, and with their computers, not mine, so it's not killing my battery life. And then, when I'm done, I just re-download the file. It only exists in one place. There's no backup file to the program being put on my computer. And then I just have my finished file, which I can upload. That's it. So I have the original. I make a copy of that, which I export off. I then upload to the cloud. It stays on the cloud. It lives on the cloud for forever. I'm on the tier. Paying $100 a year means that I am limitless in terms of how much stuff I can have on their cloud, how many downloads I can have, how many renders I can have. So it doesn't take that long to upload. It's much faster, doesn't kill my battery. I download, I then make a copy of that download on my external, and then I do what I want with that file, and then I can delete that too. So my footprint on my actual Chromebook is awesome. It's so much faster, it's so much easier to work with. I gotta say, for Chrome, I feel like when I first came across WeVideo, there were a lot of things in terms of a video editor that it didn't have. It's a little expensive for what it is, all of the things. And I used to think that a lot. Now, not having it on my computer, if you've ever had corruption files on your computer and lost everything, that has never happened to me through WeVideo. And I've used them before. It's one of those things where the workflow and ease of use of it, again, it goes back to my idea that, sure, in terms of feature rich, it is maybe not the best. I'm not saying that it replaces Adobe, Premiere Pro or Final Cut or any of the very premier ones. But in terms of hassle, in terms of workflow, in terms of getting something usable out quickly, I've not found anything better than it. I forgot about this one during this, and I wanted to bring it out. I downloaded the beta of YouTube's video editor that was free, and that was one of the worst things I have ever dealt with. And here's the thing, I am fully aware that, the YouTube one, it might increase, it might get better eventually, But here's the thing, like, I feel like from YouTube's end, there are too many videos being uploaded to YouTube that they don't want. Like, they are having to pay storage for videos, you know, to live on their site that they're not making any money from. Now, they're making enough money from other videos, that's fine, but typically speaking, the people who make better videos are also spending money on video editors and video equipment, and they're putting time and effort into their videos. They're not just pointing a camera at something, which, you know, you can make fun of that if you want to. But the idea that they're going to make a comprehensive video editor for free to people doesn't make sense to me. And it's not what they're doing. And I couldn't even get YouTube, which is owned by Google, to download the file and export them to a Chromebook. It kept saying that there was a problem and issues, and I was like, I'm done. It's also super slow to do anything and to make edits. It's the least intuitive editor I've ever used. And I just don't see any of these problems being fixed. While I realize that, like, there might be an app or a company that I didn't mention that fixes things that, you know, like what I was saying with Cyberlink, like, that's just a file reader. Like, they haven't figured out the exact format of the file I was using, and maybe through firmware, eventually that's not a difficult problem. And sure, these things can be increased and bettered and all of the things, but I feel like the culture is moving away from that. It's now that where everything is the subscription-based plan, which understood WeVideo is doing and has been doing for a long time. But I feel like because they were the first ones that were doing it, they've optimized it to such an extent that I just don't see anyone else there catching up, especially considering that most of them are pushing for a sale up front and not really giving anything for that value. So, just as a thing for people on Chromebook who are trying to make videos, it doesn't really matter what Chromebook you have or what the processing speed or, you know, chip or any of that is. It's all done online. As long as you have a fairly stable internet connection, I've not had any problems. And I've been having a nightmare trying to find a video editor because I was trying to cheap out and not spend $100 a year, which realistically, with the price of everything else, it's about what I was paying when I was buying video editors before it went to the subscription service. So take it for what you will. It's not a bad option.